Hello, hello. We are back. And there's my overlay. How is everyone? The I felt like, we haven't really done a Euro stream in a while. Yes, there was last week, but last week was a little special. Didn't get to chat with any Europeans, even though it's also very early in America right now. The My first question before the stream was about Germany, which kind of relates to everything that's going on in Europe right now. I lived in Germany for 3 years. I lived in Frankfurt uh, from 2015 to 2018. And what's interesting is it wasn't really even my personal experience because my time there, like if it weren't for my wife being there, I probably wouldn't have met or talked to any Germans. Um, and that's because just my work, I didn't run into any Germans. When I went to restaurants, I didn't run into any Germans. It was Frankfurt. It's a very international city, and I wasn't out there making friends because I was married and things like this. But my wife was getting a master's, and so she was friends with lots of people, and she was also volunteering at a refugee center in Frankfurt, um, which is very interesting. So I visited this refugee center several times, and I saw how Germany kind of dealt with and handled refugees, which is of course like a very relevant thing now that we're gonna have. Well, we are having this huge influx of Ukrainian refugees in the rest of Germany. I mean, in not Germany, mostly Poland actually, but throughout Europe. And so it was interesting to see how the Germans handled refugees. They Weirdly, the Germans had a lot of Germans have a lot of infrastructure in general, but weirdly the Germans had a lot of infrastructure for dealing with refugees. And this was kind of in place because in the 80s there was this odd German minority that lived in Russia, and the German government decided to allow them to all have refugee status in Germany. And so they moved all over these Russian Germans during that time and set up, you know, so you ended up having like government programs and camps and this entire system of bringing over refugees during the late 80s, 90s. And it seems really weird because people are like, wait, why are there a bunch of Russians in the middle of Germany? And it was like, well, it was this very small group of historically that had to do with. It's really difficult to describe. There's actually a German population, I think in Uzbekistan as well, and the the history is really weird on how these Germans ended up in the middle of Central Asia. Um, but yeah, the refugees in Germany were mostly Syrians and Afghans and a few others. And it was interesting at the time. Merkel had took a big risk in saying that we should let in all these Syrian refugees. She let in close to 1 million, and she got a lot of flack. The right wing party uh, grew substantially under that period. Nothing compared to America. So like, but I remember meeting my wife's friends and them being really worried that the far right party had taken 15% in the most recent election after Merkel had let in these refugees. And it's like 15%. It's like, well, in America the far right party is 48, 49%. So like, what do you do? But they were very worried. But um it turns out that now those refugees aren't really too much of a problem because it turned out that the average Syrian refugee was more skilled and more educated than the average German. Um, which, people say, how can that be? And you say, well, actually, Syria is a much more educated country than you think it is. And also Syrians that had the money to travel and escape Syria tended to be the richer Syrians. So the Syrians that ended up arriving in Germany ended up being, uh, I guess, very useful. A lot of them had medical degrees, and in a lot of Western Europe, there's a need for more doctors and nurses and such. Um, and it was interesting, like visiting these camps, because the Germans, they were able to put out these. They're mainly just shipping containers with AC units, AC and heating units inside, but they put them really close to public schools so that the kids could all go to school, and they'd set up teachers and translation services so that the kids could learn German really quick, and they did learn German really quick. Some of those kids had only been there a year or two, and they're already fluent. Um, and so it's it was interesting. They did a really good job on that front. What the Germans didn't do a good job on is it's very difficult to get German citizenship. Um, which to someone in America, it's hard to imagine how the rest of the world works. But generally, New World countries, the Pan Americas, if you're born in your country, you are a citizen. For the rest of the world, it doesn't work that way. You know, they start like calculating how much blood you have that is of the nation state, which doesn't really even make sense like philosophically. But you have to prove that oh, my grandmother was German, and then maybe I can get citizenship and things like that. Um, so it's really different. I mean, you can be multi-generational not citizen in Germany, which, unlike in America, like at least in America, as screwed up as our system is, it goes away after one generation. Like all children born in America are American citizens, and it stops. But so there was a lot to admire on what Germany was doing at the time, and how they let in refugees. And maybe it was Merkel did something that was very unpopular, and that was the right thing to do. Um, and it's funny because living in Frankfurt, like most of the people in Frankfurt were to the left of Merkel and considered Merkel a conservative, but Merkel in America would be a liberal. And so it's like to say like, oh, I admire Merkel for some of the things that she's done. Like if I said that in Germany, at least certainly in Frankfurt, they'd be like, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" Like, like, and I'd be like, "I don't know, she seems pretty great to me," but it's it's the difference of where you're from. But uh, so now we're going to see more of that. Some people say there's a bit of a hypocrisy when it comes to Syrian refugees versus Ukrainian refugees, and yeah, there was. I mean, um, uh, these Syrian refugees should have been accepted in most places with open arms, but it was the resistance is not great. And it's the same, America. I'm not saying America's great because America doesn't let in enough refugees at all, and it's hard to get to America versus Europe. And um, so it's refugees. It's funny because it's like people that are you're going to let in people that are going to love your country and to like and help build it, like tenfold if they make it. They're going to be thankful. Um, and so it's odd that people have weird beliefs about refugees, like that they're just gonna arrive and drain all the resources and something transform the country. Um, but it's also a weird thing that these refugee influxes do cause people to become more right wing. You if you go to Texas, um, the white population in Texas is fairly right wing, and ends up being kind of anti Mexican in many ways. I guess it's this feeling of being threatened or something. So you get this kind of natural flow of stuff. So the same thing might happen to with Ukrainian coming into Western Europe. You may get weird attitudes suddenly appearing in the rest of the population. But I don't know. It's an interesting time in Europe, right? Like everybody kind of thought, the EU and NATO were these dying ideas, and now all of a sudden there's this, at least this past week, this feeling of resurgence of European unity. Uh, Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine have all applied to be in the EU, which I don't know how that's going to work, considering all three of them have breakaway provinces. But um, but we'll see. Sometimes you get these like weird ones, like, all right, okay. So I don't understand this one at all, but okay. Uh, um, yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, Syria. So I've been to Syria twice. So I do kind of feel a lot of connection to Syria, and I know a lot about like Syrian history and Syrian politics. And so when I think of my hatred of Putin, um, a lot of it has to do with what Putin did to Syria, and uh, it's also something I really dislike about Trump. Um, but essentially, right after Trump was elected, he allowed Putin to bomb northwest Syria and completely level Aleppo and that area up there, and just killed so many people, and caused this massive refugee crisis and things like that. And so um, it's tough because Syria is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been, and just such friendly, wonderful people. Um, and it's so much so that I went there twice. Like I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a beautiful place. I wouldn't mind going again and seeing it again. Um, which I don't do that very often, but uh, it's something. I mean, the Crusader castles are insane. The Roman ruins are insane. Even the cute little water wheels of Hama, the citadels of Aleppo, the weirdness of Latakia. Um, do I think Moldova is next after Ukraine? So I think I did see the news that on a Belarusian like map, they had Russian forces going into Transnistria, and I'm not sure if that was just like they're going to use Transnistria to try to stage warfare to go east into Ukraine. Um, for those that don't know, like Moldova has a breakaway area um, in its east called Transnistria. It's essentially mostly ethnically Russian. So like the basic idea is that after Moldova got its independence from the Soviet Union, a lot of people, there was some talk among the Moldovans, because Moldovans are mainly ethnically Romanian and their primary language is Romania. In fact, Moldova used to be part of Romania and then was taken from Romania to become part of the Soviet Union. So it was separated and divorced from Romania by the Soviets and has been independent or separate from Romania for a while, but they still speak Romanian or a version of Romanian. After 100 years, there's some split. But with most of the breakaway provinces, most of the republics that were under the Soviet Union, ethnic Russians were either moved in or went there on their own. And so when Moldova got its independence, you had a large number of ethnic Russians that were in the country for various reasons. Um, some of them pro-Russia, some of them very anti-Russia. Like you have to understand that a lot of people are sent to these places historically because they disagreed with the powers in Moscow, and so they were kind of sent there in exile. And so they had a civil war in the 90s where the ethnic Russians kind of went to the east And though there's still plenty of ethnic Russians in the rest of Moldova, but a lot of ethnic Russians went to the east and had a war that was somewhat supported by the Russians. The Russians provided them weaponry, and they were able to effectively break away. And so Transnistria is they elect their own president, they have their own money, they have border crossings. It's in every sense an independent country, except it has no recognition from anybody. So. But the idea that Transnistria would want Russian forces in it, staging warfare against Ukraine, is a big jump. I don't know if the Transnistrian government would really even go for that. But I mean, it's a funny thing about these breakaway provinces because I think about the big barrier for Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova to join the EU or to join NATO is the fact that they have breakaway republics in their borders. And it's almost, if you're in a conspiracy mindset, that Putin did this on purpose, that he purposely wanted pieces of the countries broken off so that they couldn't join NATO or the EU because it would just be too much of a headache. But, if that were the case, why did he bother invading Ukraine? Like, Ukraine already had their breakaway parts, right? Like, it was already really difficult for Ukraine to join the EU or NATO because of these breakaway parts. So, I don't know. I mean, if the Russians completely annexed Transnistria, then it would be easier for Moldova to do whatever it wanted and join the EU and join NATO. But I don't know. It's weird. I mean, the Moldovans, there's definitely like the Moldovan youth are pretty split on whether they want to rejoin Romania or when they want to stay independent and things like this. So you've got, it's complicated politics in Moldova, but I don't think that Russia is going to succeed with Ukraine. I think it's going to be a quagmire in Ukraine for a while. So if they want to take on Moldova too, I mean, Moldova has no military. They have some military, but they don't have much of military. They can't even take Transnistria. So I don't know. It would be weird if the Russians took Moldova. It would be really a statement that they were expanding. I think the denazify comments relate partly to the Azov battalion. Yeah, I mean the propaganda war with the Russians. I mean, I'm sure most people are familiar with this, but the Russians are using this line that Ukraine has been infiltrated by Nazis, and they need to denazify the country. And their proof of this is that there's a Nazi battalion out there in eastern Ukraine. And it's true, there is, but to an American, it's like, well, we've got like Nazi military groups. Like, is someone going to claim that America's filled with Nazis? Because, I mean, it is filled with Nazis, but like to say like somebody needs to invade us to remove our Nazis, that's not a very good. It's not a very good argument. Like, I think most countries have a far right element, and so everybody kind of knows that like far right elements exist in every country, and so it's not really a great excuse to invade a country that there's a far right element. Of course there's a far right element. There's a far right element in every country. Like, so you can invade anywhere if they have a far right element. It's a little silly. The Rush, and it hasn't really gone very far. I mean, I've heard some people use it and like try to show these videos of the battalion like dipping their bullets in like pork in order to like shoot Chechen soldiers, which makes no sense because like that doesn't do anything. Like, that's not, like, the Quran specifically says that if you accidentally eat pork or you are forced to eat pork, it doesn't count as a sin. Like, So like this idea that like you're causing them to sin by shooting them with a pork covered bullet is silly. It's silly to a Muslim. He'd just be like, why? What? Like I saw Al Jazeera pick up that story too about the pork covered bullets, and I'm just like a Muslim would be like, I don't like what like does do they think they're somehow like causing us a problem? Like the bullet might kill me, yes, like but who cares if the bullet is covered in pork? It doesn't mean anything to me. But it's really oh uh Ukrainian army basically saved Syria by destroying all the Russian planes that bombed Syria. Yeah, if only we had time traveling Bran. Yeah, it's too bad that they already killed everybody. Oh gosh, the horrors in Syria. It's let's see, how did I finance my travels when I was younger? I the travels were pretty cheap. I mean, I lived in hostels and ate, yogurt and bread from grocery stores. It was not much. But there was also I taught English in different places. So when I got out of college, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, so I taught English in China for a year, and then I moved to Taiwan, and I lived in Taiwan for about 6 months, and then saved up some money and traveled through Southeast Asia for about 3 months, and then I moved to Japan and I taught English in Japan for about 3 months, and then went back to America, went to grad school, um, and then I had a job, and then through, um, I lived pretty modestly. I lived in a group house through most of my 20s, um, so I didn't pay very much rent, so I was able to travel to different places. And then in my 30s, I had a lot more money, but the government was paying for my housing anyway. And so I lived in Jordan for a couple of years, and Egypt for a couple of years, and Germany for 3, and now I'm in Taiwan. So it's you know, that's that's it. Pork colored bullets like it's stuck in the bullet barrel. Maybe, probably. Yeah, I mean hostels. I did hostels for good, you know, 17 years. I mean, it was back in the when I was really young, hostels were, I mean, they were fun, but they were also like so dangerous. You had to sleep with, your pack around you, hugging it because you didn't want to get robbed. Now they're so safe. There's like lockers and stuff. It's so easy. Um, do you think we're headed towards a new Cold War? Here in Japan, people are talking about rearming. I'll be once U.S. nukes on Japanese soil. Um, well, this gets into some. This gets into like perception versus reality, and perception's important, um, but it's not even the Ukraine thing, but I would say that in the past 5 years or so, um, there's been more feeling that China is being aggressive, and I wouldn't even say that China is being more aggressive. They're kind of just been doing what they've been doing for the past 20 years, but there's more feeling that China is doing something, and so there's been slow talk about Japan rearming. Of course, there has to be like I think an amendment to their constitution. I think their constitution says they can only spend like 1% of their budget on military or something, and there would have to be a change. Um, and America would probably have to sign off, and I think America probably would sign off because that's more weapons we can sell. Um, but there's definitely more of that feeling. I don't think it's necessarily justified. I mean, I'm not saying China's any angel because they're not. I think most people know, if they've been watching my channel a while, they know about my feelings on East Turkestan and Hong Kong and Taiwan and things like this. So, but at the same time, I don't think China is going to invade anything. So there's something and this relates to Ukraine too. So there's something in that they teach at war colleges called the 3-to-1 attacker defender invasion rule. And so which is basically it's based on nothing except history. But generally speaking, armies like to have 3 times as many attackers in order to take territory from a defender. Just because the defender has a as an advantage, they're in bunkers, they have high ground, things like that. And so you need about a 3-to-1 ratio if you're going to do something like that. So you can take something like Taiwan. Taiwan has a standing army of 170,000 people, and then not to mention they have reserves, but of a million or something. So you've got 170,000 people in the army. So China would need at minimum around 500,000 people to invade Taiwan. And so then you think, okay, 500,000 people, like that would take thousands of ships in order to bring them across the straits. Not to mention the fact that Taiwan, like it's incredibly mountainous country, like incredibly difficult terrain to invade. Even if it were able to take the cities, people could flee up into the mountains, and then you could hold that territory forever. The Filipinos know this pretty well, because if you spend time in the Philippines, you know that there have been communists and Muslim separatist groups in the south that have been living in the mountains for literally decades, and the Filipino army, like, just it's so difficult and just not worth it to go up and clean them out that they just leave them there. So it's kind of unrealistic. Like when you think of these things, like could China invade Taiwan? No, like it would take so much. It would take so much effort to do. I just don't think they would ever do that. It's just so much. And they presently don't even have thousands of ships to bring the people over. And that's just the invasion force. You need logistics, right? So the logistics, there's tends to be I think a 9-to-1 ratio of logistic to soldiers, like bringing food, supplies, repairs for the machinery. So on top of this, like 500,000 person like invasion force, you need 5 million people, like doing repairs, providing food. It's ridiculous. Now, by comparison, I think the only publicly available like plan about the invasion of Taiwan is the United States actually designed an invasion plan for Taiwan during World War II when Japan held Taiwan. And at the time, there were 20,000 Japanese soldiers there, and so America had planned, I think 150,000 soldiers was part of their plan to take Taiwan, which is the equivalent of D-Day. Like D-Day, that's how many people were on D-Day. And so in order to take Taiwan, you would need and that was in 1944 with 20,000 Japanese troops. You'd need a D-Day size operation. And now there's 170,000 Taiwanese military. So you're talking about an operation that is, 5 to 8 times bigger than D-Day. It's just not happening. It's just not happening. Like, come on. Like, now, at the same time, like, and this is the thing, right? Is everyone is talking about like Russia totally blew this as well. Like they didn't even need to like deal with the water and the mountains and things like this. I mean, yeah, there's bad things about Ukraine's territory. Like Ukraine is a swamp. There's a lot of mud, especially this is rainy season. So it was really stupid of the Russians to invade on this month. But yeah, like you've got 200,000 Russians, and they shortchanged it. They needed so many more in order to do this. It was just it was and so it was really bad. Now, I saw a quick thing here. What would you do your PhD on now, and where would you get the lot of money? Oh, I thought you were asking where I'd get a PhD if I didn't have any money. Go to Germany because all your education is free. Germans pay for it. But on the but back on the 3-1, like um, it's just it's amazing that that the Russians did this. And keep in mind that like America's also really stupid about this because even if beyond the 3-1 invasion rule, right? That's just for defeating. Then there's another ratio. There's the occupation ratio. So I think after World War II, the Allied forces had a 80 soldiers for every 1,000 people in Germany as a ratio for the occupation. And I think for Iraq, our ratio was 6 for every 1,000. And I think for Afghanistan, it was zero point 0.5 for every 1,000. So you can imagine like how well these different things worked, um, like how many hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers like do you need? Actually, it's millions. You need millions of Russian soldiers to do a proper occupation to hold. Like you just can't do it. Um, all right, best way to help Ukraine as individuals. If you'd like, let's see here. I just saw a a today. I just saw a good resource on this. Um, where was that? Hold on. Um, okay. So the ones on the resources I saw for charities that are pretty good to um, donate to if you're eager to donate. Let's see here. Let's add some text here. One was called. All right. So there's one called I'm gonna put this up. Hold on a second. Come on, let me edit this text. Here we go. Is all I can do? Okay. There's one called the AmeriCares Foundation. Um, and the AmeriCares Foundation is an emergency response team in Poland to help support health services for families affected by the humanitarian crisis. They're based in Krakow. Um, so they're a good one I've heard. And then I've also heard of this one, but this has to do because I have a lot of connections to DC. I mean, it's my main home. But this one is World Central Kitchen. And so the chef Jose Andres has a humanitarian group that's based out of Poland, Moldova, Romania, and Hungary that provides food for refugees coming over. And then there is the um, let's do a new one here. I've heard that the International Rescue Committee is a good one as well, I've heard. The International Rescue Committee um, in Poland, they're preparing for 1 million refugees. International Rescue Committee is working to scale up support to the government and civil society by providing for the basic needs of the people fleeing. They partner with Poland and Ukraine, are mobilizing resources for critical support to civilians. Um, and then they also work on humanitarian law and things like that. So these are the three good ones that I've heard of right now. So I'll just leave that on the bottom here. Um, let's see. Um, Ukraine is actively recruiting foreign fighters through social media. I know countries like UK have formal foreign units like the Gurkhas, but this is completely different. Will this crowdsourcing of soldiers matter? This is interesting because Northeast Syria has this as well, and of course historically we hear about this in various places, not just like the French Foreign Legion, but I'm talking like the Spanish Civil War was this very hip thing for people from around the world to go and fight in for a while, and so there was all these foreigners in the Spanish Civil War. Um, and I'd never heard about like since then like how many foreigners like to go join random conflicts. I mean, I suppose Al Qaeda was that, and yeah, in America we had the John Walker Lind who like went to um, uh, Afghanistan and became one of the Taliban, the American Taliban guy. Um, he got he did 20 years in America and finally made it out. I mean, he's John Walker Lynd's actually free, but he's this kid that he was like 20 something, and he like went over to Afghanistan and joined the Taliban, and then they caught him, and then he spent 20 years in prison, and now he's 40, but it's like, oh my gosh, but he's free. But I don't know if the foreign fighters will make too much of a difference. Like, um, there's enough Ukrainians. I think what they're looking for are weapons, right? Um, but man, I mean, because the Ukraine's implemented a draft, and they've got a lot of men, they've got a lot of people. I think it's mainly that if they're looking for weapons. But yeah, I think that you will see a lot of your people going. It'll be a hip conflict, and I'm using hip like I don't mean it in a derogatory way. I just mean like there are a lot of people in the world that feel like they need to find a cause to fight for. A lot of us feel lost in life, and we want to be part of something bigger, and and this is one of those clear times where there's clearly a good side and a bad side. There's not that many of those wars out there where you're like, oh, these are the good guys and those are the bad guys, which is why I think there are a lot of foreign fighters ended up going to Northeast Syria, because Northeast Syria as well, it's very clear who the good guys and the bad guys are. Like, like you're fighting ISIS, and it's this group of like, and for a group of like you know feminist like soldiers in Northeast Syria. Like, there's clear good guys and there's clear bad guys. Um, I think we will see a lot of foreigners go, but I don't know if they will be a huge factor. I don't think the foreign fighters were a huge factor in Spain in the Spanish Civil War. They were just kind of, I mean, they produced some good literature. You got Homage to Catalonia. Germans conquered Western Europe at 1-1. I mean, I have to look at that. But I mean, their conquest of Western Europe was kind of a fluke, right? I mean, they slipped through the French ranks, the French line, and blitzkrieged past them, um, and then so and then it was like Netherlands and Belgium. I mean, come on. And so with I don't there's talk that the Germans may have never been able to take the UK. or would have taken them, 20 years or something. It was tough. But I do wonder, like, how long the Germans would have been able to hold France. Because I mean, there's a lot of romanticization of the French resistance. Like, oh, we were all part of the French resistance. It's like, were you? Because this is a very fast, time. But it takes a long time to like organize these resistance movements and everything. So, and to be effective, like it could be that like over time the French resistance would have been a big serious problem for the Germans. Would they have had enough people to really hold France for a long period of time? I don't know. I don't know. But but that's it's an interesting point about how quickly the Germans took Western Europe. Um, but of course, they did kind of just pull a sneaky move, getting past the French line, and then um, had it not been for that one great move, uh, you know, they they might have not been able to take France. I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe the Russian strategist was dyslexic and thought it was a 1-to-3 ratio. Um, so this is an interesting thing to think about. Russia's element of surprise and their willingness to shell everything offset their lack of soldiers. Um, so Ukraine, though, does have a relatively spread out rural population compared to most countries. Um, it's a big area, and the population is really spread out. So yeah, you can level those major cities, but you're still going to deal with all of these little villages that are filled with people that don't want you there. I mean, you can maybe hope that in these villages these people don't care, but it seems like they really care, um, and they're really invigorated to fight. Um, but yeah, they're gonna try to. I think the Russian technique strategy is going to be um, destroy as much power, water, food, uh, try to make the population suffer, and then see if they can bargain something. Like I think a lot of people thought the strategy was essentially, um, if anyone's ever played the video game Civilization, because it seems like the Russian strategists like based everything off of a video game. But like if you ever played Civilization, you know that your strategy is invade quickly and then immediately negotiate and try to bargain for territory and then get out and then wait and then build up for your next war. And it seems like that this was their strategy. Like, okay, we're going to blitzkrieg in and then get what we want. Like Ukraine to say, oh, Eastern Ukraine is Russia's, and we're not going to join NATO, and then peace, and then Russia can build up for a few more years and try it again, like in 10 years, because it was essentially the strategy on Crimea, right? They just took a piece, nobody did anything, Ukraine rolled over, the West rolled over, and they're like, huh, we can just do this, we can just take Ukraine in pieces. But it didn't work this time. Ukraine, they weren't able to come in and just like make the Ukrainian government um, look to negotiate. And so now the Russians are stuck in a quagmire forever, or until they pull out, which who knows when that's going to be. Um, countries tend to be really stubborn when it comes to these misguided invasions. This is coming from an American. um, I love these live streams. Would you argue how would you argue against Biden personally made gas prices go up pertaining to the Keystone pipeline? Okay, so for those Europeans out there, um, the right now the right wing, the Republican Party of America, is trying to claim that This is all America's fault. This is all like Biden's fault because the amount of oil that we import from Russia is equal or less than the amount of oil that would come from the Keystone Pipeline, which is this pipeline project that Biden canceled. Um, the thing is, the Keystone Pipeline it's going to take like 10 years to build. So you're talking about like stuff in like the massive future, right? Also, like oil is like so there's actually plenty of leases right now. I think I read there were 6,000 like leases for oil development that are currently um that oil companies can currently apply for and get and dig for oil in America. Like there's plenty of oil opportunities. So if they wanted them, but actually oil companies are looking to downscale and get into renewable energy. This is like what they're doing. They know the writings on the wall that oil is done. So to say like the Keystone Pipeline, like again, if time traveling Bran were involved, like sure, but not even. So here's the other thing about like Russian oil. Okay, so America, for the most part, like nearly all of our oil is actually domestic oil. Like America produces a lot of oil for it by itself. This is actually a big thing under the Obama administration. Under Obama, they did massive production of fracking. And so under Obama, we actually became an oil exporter because the fracking market just blew up. All of a sudden, America had infinite oil. Anyway, our consumption was still high, and so we started importing again. But once you look at like who we import from, I think it's 60% from Canada, and then it's like 10% from Saudi Arabia, and it's like 9% or something from Russia. So like when we're talking about it, like how much oil comes from Russia in America, it's less than 1%. I think it's around 1%, but it's like less than 1%. But to like make these arguments like, oh well, we could have like denied Russia like oil. Well, you can't because oil is like bought and sold on a market. Like if you don't buy the oil, somebody else buys the oil. So you're just buying it from somebody else and the price goes up in that country and then somebody else shifts to buying the Russian oil because so it all balances because it's a market. So it's really quite silly. Because somebody's going to be buying the oil regardless. Like if America doesn't buy the oil, somebody else is buying the oil. It doesn't matter. That's how the markets work. But Keystone Pipeline, like again, like 10 years in the future, like it's such a dumb argument that like it works for these right wingers who don't really like think about the arguments. Like they have their beliefs anyway, and so like they're gonna throw the talking points up and use those talking points. But once you start like examining the talking points, they make no sense. But it doesn't even matter that they make no sense, like because they could say anything and it doesn't. The right wingers will be repeating their talking points. But like the Keystone Pipeline, it's one of the most illogical things. Like a pipeline that would have been built in 10 years, like would have been completed in 10 years, like would have affected Russia now. Like okay, time travelers, but um, this is interesting. Foreign fighters provide plausible deniability and cover for specialists to enter the war zone and provide training and expertise without escalating. That's interesting. We of course, I think so certainly when the Soviets were in Afghanistan, we had trainers over there to teach people how to use javelins, even though javelins don't take much training, but nonetheless. But we did have people go over there to but that's actually part of any weapons sales project. So you have all weapons that America sells to people, like they come with people that also are there to teach you how to use the weapons, and that's all like part of the funding. And we're certainly going to be selling Ukraine weapons, so we're certainly going to be sending people to send over like how to use these. I mean, that's just part of it. Now, there's under military stuff, there's a difference between an advisor and I think they, I'm not a DoD person, but DoD person will know there's like a Title 4 versus Title 10 kind of thing where like there's people that teach you strategy and there's people that teach you how to use a weapon, like how to turn it on, how to point it, and then there's people that teach you strategy. Those are funded differently and there's different rules. So I think you can't send over like the strategy people, but you can send over the um, the people on how to use the weapon pretty easily. Um, Now, if there's going to be, I don't know, CIA people or something, I don't know. I know nothing about the CIA, so who knows? I mean, who knows what they do? Um, but yeah, I mean, I imagine foreign fighters would provide plausible deniability. Be like, we don't know that guy. He was just some foreign fighter that showed up. You know, who knows? I mean, it's probably correct. Yeah, that I can't really say. It's a lot of speculation of the future. Um, this is also true. The Germans didn't have all of France because they didn't have a manpower. They barely had northern France. They essentially were just occupying Paris. But southern France, no Germans went down there. Um, ta-ta. Yeah, this is the thing. Puppet government. You need to find collaborators, which is a talent. You know, uh, so you know, can you? Will they be able to? I mean, any place you're going to be able to find collaborators. There's always people that are that are able to sell out for either safety or money or whatever. I mean, people are just trying to live another day. So one, I can't blame collaborators too much, but at the same time, um, will they be able to find at this moment in Ukraine? It doesn't seem like it because everybody's so gung ho. But who knows? Who knows how things will go? Yeah. Yeah, I agree that the French Resistance was pretty irrelevant. It's one of those romanticized things that appear in movies. Like this beautiful French woman with her bicycle and baguettes who like is passing messages and whatever. But it's something that wasn't really something that happened. Um, I will say that like in 10 years or 20 years, what would have happened? I think at the time the French knew that the Americans and the British were on the way. Um, so you kind of didn't need it as much. Like, why put your life on the line when somebody else is gonna, um, so. So I played a lot of Civ 2 and Civ 3. So I don't know about I didn't even know they got up to Civ 6. Surely could. Russia be content after taking Ukraine. No. No. I mean, I think Putin would. And when we say Russia, I don't want to say Russia because like, you know, the Russian people are a diverse bunch. But I want to say like Putin and his close knit group of oligarchs. I think they are obsessed with with the old empire. It's funny because there's always these people. There's always these groups that like look to the greatest extent of empire and like try to get back there. Like when I lived in Japan, there were these crazies on the street that would go around with these big maps showing the Japanese empire and how like they needed to retake that island from the Russians and retake Taiwan and Korea and reestablish themselves in Manchuria and I asked Japanese people, I was like, who are those people? And they're like, no, those are nut jobs. Don't worry about them. Like, don't. But there's always these people, right? I think Putin is one of these people. I think he in a theoretical world, he wants the Soviet Union like borders back, and maybe even Warsaw Pact borders back. But oh, assuming no other responsibilities, could I finish A Song of Ice and Fire? Um, so I have a assuming no other responsibilities, I think I could probably do it. I do have a plan, but like if the winds, I have a plan, I have a crowdsourcing plan for a Dream of Spring. If the Winds of Winter is released, I have a crowdsourcing plan for a Dream of Spring, um, where I think we can crowdsource something. Um, because also like yeah I could finish a Song of Ice and Fire, but again it would take me like 10 years, like I'm not it's really tough. I don't know if I could put in 10 years of work for that, but if I crowdsource it, and just worry about like the general outline of the plot and like editing and like consulting with people, I think something we could probably pull something off. We could pull something off. um what did I see here? Let's see here. Hold on. If I were time traveling Bran, I'd stop Harambe from being killed. Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think like any time in history where you can go back and prevent that little stuff. But the thing is, you're probably stopping your own self um from being born at that point, right? Because you only have to have a very small like change to history to affect like when your parents are having sex, and then and then yeah. But we're talking about Harambe the gorilla, right? And with this one, yes. The oh geez. Before we get opinion on Jimmy Carter's presidency, I think Jimmy Carter's underrated. He was dealt a very bad hand in his time, and he was blamed for some things that were not really his fault. Like he was blamed for inflation, not really his fault. He was blamed for the Iran hostage crisis, which not really his fault. Yes, there was a botched military exercise where some rescue operation that fell apart as well. That maybe he could have put more oversight and care into it, but I don't know. It was a really tough situation. But I will always give him props for bringing peace between Egypt and Israel, um, and just what that's done for both of those countries and those peoples and the region. Um, it has been a lot. I mean, without Jimmy Carter, I don't know if Israel and Egypt would have ever stopped fighting. It was something. So I mean, the the so obviously history of that region. You've got after the creation of the war to create Israel. Um, the There was always, always conflict there in that region, and then you have Palestinian refugees getting pushed into different places, people getting upset about the Palestinian refugees causing trouble. People kind of look to Egypt as the biggest army, as the one to really put Israel in its place. Um, Israel took Sinai uh, in the 6 Days War, and then um, Egypt really learned from that war, and then they ended up developing like new tanks and new tank warfare. And Egypt actually came back in the 70s and reconquered most of Sinai and was in a really good situation going forward, or at least a little more evenly matched. Um, and so you're talking about two hostile, somewhat evenly matched like forces who could be at each other's throat for just ever. Um, and Jimmy Carter bringing peace there was a big deal. And I don't, I'm trying to think of like and solving. He solved uh, a flashpoint between two major powers. It's hard to think of another like flashpoint area where we've just like where it's been solved. I mean, even Northern Ireland, like which isn't even as big of an issue compared to something like war between Israel and Egypt. Uh, um, that isn't even completely solved. But right now, the Egyptians and the Israelis, like they have a lot of like government cooperation. Yeah, the peoples have a big problem with each other, but the governments really get along, which is really weird, you know. But they do a lot of cooperation in exercises and everything. And granted, we give both countries massive amount of money to be friends. So, and I say we, I mean America. But so I give Jimmy Carter a lot of props, but I don't really see much wrong with Jimmy Carter. People like to beat up on him. Doesn't really deserve it. Um, Watch a doc that Ukraine has huge offshore oil reserves. Could that be the real reason Putin is invading to eliminate a rival when gaining one of the largest energy reserves? I think that's part of it. I think that's definitely part of it. But I think it just, in general, it has. I think it has to do with Russian-owned businesses. I think this is very much a private oligarch kind of thing. Like who has investment in various Russian firms that are stationed in Crimea, along the Black Sea. Who is going to like individually going to be making money from having this territory versus like the Russia as a whole. Like he's not looking for like benefiting Russia as a whole. He's looking for who's going to benefit him and his friends. Because it was really about Ukraine getting closer to Europe, having open open trade and competition in a European market. Those old Russian firms like can't compete, but if you keep them within Russia, there's a lot of money to be made. Um, so I think it is a lot of that. Um, I mean, yeah, you look where the money is, but I think if you like, it's not just that. Like the breakaway regions of, say, Georgia, like yeah, there's energy in there, but there's also tourism. Like the breakaway region in Georgia is like a big Russian like vacation spot. Um, Let me see, which is why like I could see like Putin wanting like Odessa because it's a big Russian vacation spot, Um, let me let me uh, let me pull this up for a second. Here we go. This is one of those things like about like Transnistria. Like Transnistria doesn't really have any resources, so like would Russia care about that too much? Um, so the two breakaway regions of Georgia, you've got South Ostensia and this one. I think this is is this breakaway as well? Jesus Christ! But this is like vacation homes and like beaches. Um, I'm sure there's resources there too, but it's it's nuts. It's just a lot of Russian-owned businesses. So I think it has to do with that. Uh, uh, uh. But, um, let's see here. Although I understand why Russia is doing this, why do you think Russia kept being hostile towards the West even after the fall of the USSR? Well, they weren't hostile under Boris Yeltsin. Um, as much as people make fun of Boris Yeltsin for being a drunk and things like that, um, Boris Yeltsin was in my opinion, a good person because he really believed in democracy and he really wanted democracy to work in Russia. And I think the fact that he stepped down after two terms, like a good leader should, is something to admire about him. Um, but the criticism from Russians, and I've heard this even from liberal Russians, like, because I've talked to, like, liberal Moscow Russians who hate Putin. They'll still be like, well, but Boris Yeltsin, he didn't keep the criminals under control, so that period was just filled with so much mafia crime, and so they kind of blame Yeltsin for this. But there was a glorious 10 years of the 90s where, like, Russia was not hostile to the United States at all. But then Putin came into power and things changed. And I do think that Putin's hostility towards the West has mainly to do with competition with Western firms, when he and his friends have money to make. And I think that's where their hostility is. I think this is, like, weirdly in Trump's mind why he thinks he can deal with Putin, because he's just going to make some sort of business deal or something with him. But I think Trump was being massively naive and capitulated, like, just so much with Putin. But I think that's the main hostility. I think has to do with his own wealth and selfishness. Now, I do admit, though, that Russian hostility towards America and Putin's hostility towards America is just massive. Like, why did Putin put so many resources into cyber warfare, interfering in the 2016 election and things like that? Why do we have this stereotype of the Russian bot, like, going online, destabilizing governments? I don't know. I think maybe in Putin's mind, if everybody else loses, Russia wins. If he creates instability everywhere, that's better for Russia and himself somehow. But I don't really understand, like, rationally how that would work. But some people just naturally have this idea that oh, if everybody else is doing poorly, then I'm doing well. But it's yeah, it's weird. Um, let's see what I got here. I'm getting behind on some of these. Um, Thank you, Preston. I have daft Trump obsequious roommate who won't shut up about the Keystone Pipeline and pipe causing oil prices. Yeah, I mean, look, there's plenty of 6,000 open leases. Keystone Pipeline wouldn't be done for 10 years. It was a little silly. The Tolkien created a vast creation mythos and was a devout man, but main story contains no priests, temples, devotions, mentions of God, as if religion doesn't exist. Not sure how to explain that. So I did kind of have an eye-opening discussion about Tolkien with Man of the West, and he made me see that I was being a little hard on Tolkien when I sort of said that, like, oh, the Silmarillion is just written as this, like, you just have to believe that, like, God exists and that sort of thing. And he kind of says, well, no, these were definitely written as, like, histories from Bilbo and Frodo's point of view, and there's definitely going to be some error in them. And I was like, are you sure it's not, like, he's like, there are errors, there's contradictions. And I'm like, is that just retcons, though? And he's like, I don't know. I mean, certainly Christopher Tolkien was, like, maybe not J.R.R. Tolkien, but certainly Christopher Tolkien, like, understood the nuance of multiple perspectives and things like that. And I think people do forget that Christopher Tolkien has a lot of influence on what was eventually printed. So it is it is interesting, though, that for being such a religious man, where like God and the devil are major parts of the story, that you don't have, like, priests and temples and mentions of God. but I think this might have to do with. I'm trying to remember. Is Tolkien a Protestant or a Catholic? Because this is a big difference on how people kind of see the world. Which form of Christianity was he? No, no, he was Catholic too. I guess that goes away from my theory. So, um, see, I was about to say like if uh, and Tolkien insisted that his wife um, convert to Catholicism. Oh, geez. See, if you're a Protestant, I'd be like, well, maybe they're not so attached to their churches. Everything's about individual interpretation. But he's a Catholic. But then again, he's a Catholic in a very dominant Protestant country, so maybe he saw things through a Protestant lens. I don't know. I'm making excuses. Um, but you're right that it's very odd that there's not much religious debate in Lord of the Rings, or and a lot of the story is about inclusivity and fellowship, um, and rather than proving that one religion is correct. I mean, if you read it, the only way you can kind of see Tolkien being against other religions and other peoples is to look at it thematically, like to be like, well, these people came from the southeast and they're dark men. Doesn't that mean they're like, Middle Easterners and Muslims? And I was like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say. Um, he certainly didn't write anything in his letters about hatred of other religions and things like that. But it's I don't know. It's because you're right. Like if you take another equally religious writer like uh, uh, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, um, you know, it's that's just dripping. C.S. Lewis, like that's just dripping with religious imagery, and George R. R. Martin being an atheist, the fact that he was raised Catholic, like how much religion is in Ice and Fire. Um, it's yeah, it's okay. Next time, and I'm going to talk to Man of the West again. But next time I talk to Man of the West, I'm going to ask him this question, like why, for being such a religious man who may have grand religious themes to the structure and plot, why is there very little specific religion in Lord of the Rings? Um, yeah, I think that's. I will bring this up. I'll bring this up in my next chat with him. Um, let's see. If Martin never publishes Winds of Winter, can you still change names in your version and publish it as your book? Um, I guess I could. Did you know that? This is a funny thing relating to that. Um, 50 Shades of Grey, which of course sold millions and millions of copies and became like three huge movies. That started out as Twilight fan fiction, and it's very like once you know it's Twilight fan fiction, like watching um, 50 Shades of Grey, like it's just hilarious because you're just like, oh god, like I totally know who that character is. I totally know who that character is. Oh my god, this is so obvious. Um, but all she did was take her um, Twilight fan fiction and change the names and then publish it and made millions. So yeah, I suppose I could try to do something like that. Like if because for a while I did have a structure on where I thought Winds of Winter was going. I never released that video, but I had started a video a number of years ago about where I thought Winds of Winter was going. And then Game of Thrones ended and things like that, and my opinions on things changed. So I never really developed that video. But it'd be interesting though if I created my own story related on that plot line. Um, but Anyway, but if Winds comes out, like, I haven't. I can probably extrapolate and figure out a way to end um, uh, A Dream of Spring too. But have I read the first book with my knowledge of time traveling Bran? Um, Perhaps out of order, but you're right that it completely changes kind of perception of Tower of Joy and things like that, um, and like who's talking to Ned. Uh, but I'm still working on time traveling Bran, part six, um, and so it's coming together. I'm finding some interesting ideas, but it'll come. I always get fearful that I'm not going to be able to bring stuff together, but I think I'll be able to pull it together. We've been talking mostly about politics actually in this stream. This is what the Europeans are into. um, let's see here. Does future Bran know about the Children of the Forest's Harangan plan to dominate humanity? If yes, why would he send our Bran to them? Does he think Bloodraven knows about Children of the Forest's plans? Um, I mean, this. I don't know if and I'm kind of in this wavering position right now. Like, I don't know if the Children of the Forest are still doing my the destroy humanity plan that I sort of always believed up until kind of hold the door happened, that kind of confirmed that time traveling Bran was a thing. Um, I certainly the Children of the Forest wanted to, you know, deal with humanity. Whether they're still wanting to deal with humanity, I don't know. The fact that there's dormant Children of the Forest under the earth makes me think maybe, um, like Harangans, uh, but it's like such a crowded story. But why would Bran? I mean, if I were going from a straight time traveling Bran, similar to the show kind of perspective, Bran would want to send up himself to learn about the others, gain his powers, develop, and then when he finally escapes the cave, use that power to both defeat the others and become king, right? And so how Bloodraven ties into it, it's becoming even like foggier in my mind, on how it would relate. But I guess, like, why did Bloodraven go up there? Was Bloodraven stuck um, in some sort of plan? Like, what was is he trying to deal with the others? Um, and just doesn't know what to do. Was hoping to bring Bran up and stop them, and somehow fails. Um, so it's I think he's definitely going to find out that the Children of the Forest at least had a plan to dominate humanity. Whether the Children of the Forest still have a plan or are just like done, like in the show, they're just done. They had a plan to dominate humanity. It didn't work, and now they're just done. They're just broken. Um, so I'm probably going to ignore that issue in the final episode of Time Traveling Bran, but I think it is an important question to ask. Like, are the Children of the Forest still trying to dominate humanity? Because we kind of know at this point that they were, right? That they went to war. If we're going with the show, that they created the others, um, and so because we kind of like figured that that the others were part of like the Children of the Forest plan. Um, uh, I kind of sensed even before Hold the Door that there was something wrong and something off. But the show revealed that it was like, in the past, like they were the villain, but they were the villain in the past, and now they're just done. My previous theory was that they were the villain and are currently still the villain. So I don't know if they're currently still the villain. So I'm probably going to ignore that and just focus on Bran and what Bran is doing um, in the future, um, going forward. Like what he's going to do when he escapes from that sinkhole. But it's something to think about some more. I think it's a very important question, and I have to put more thought into it. Because man, it's like I did hold this belief for a long, long time that the children of the forest were the big bad. They were trying to get mankind to kill themselves, and it's like it's definitely true that they were trying to do that. Whether they're still, I don't know. You know. Let's see here. This is the question. There were some big brain people that were talking about Russia joining NATO, um, uh, and everybody says like, well, what would be the point of NATO? Isn't NATO by definition an anti-Russia like organization? And the kind of big thinkers were like, well, we can make it focused on like climate change and things like that, and um, it was a little too big brain for everybody. But I don't even know like what would have happened if I mean if Putin were a NATO member, like what how would have that affected everything? Would he still been such a bastard? Um, I don't know. I mean, like nobody stops America, who's a NATO member, invading countries. So like, would we then have the resources to stop a NATO Russia as NATO, or would they be kicked out of NATO? I don't know. It's long time voyeur, first time chatter. Have you heard about the discovery of the now largest bacterium species, 2 centimeters, that inhabits mangroves? Wonder if it's safe to eat. What? What? 2 centimeters? What? Oh my god. So this bacteria, like, it's the size of a peanut if you like push it together. Oh my god. Um, yeah, that's crazy. Now, would PETA throw a fit? This is the whole question about like how does PETA feel about clams? That's the big thing. All right, there's something on. All right, so PETA. Oh, they have something about we don't need to consume oyster scalps. Oh, okay, we learned that many. So this is wow. PETA's even against eating clams. There's a punk song called uh, "Clams Have Feelings Too," um, about this issue, but it's so some people claim that like crustaceans can't feel pain, like crabs, um, shrimp, lobster, and then other studies come out that say, oh well, maybe they can. And so when we steam them alive, we're actually giving them a shock of pain. Um, but and then the question is like, well, what about clams and oysters? Like they don't really, they don't have a central nervous system. Like, does that count? Um, but they're at least still animals. The thing with bacteria, though, bacteria isn't an animal. I mean, it's in a different kingdom. So you could at least claim that bacteria is like eating, you know, I mean, PETA's not against eating plants, so or fungus. So that's two kingdoms or algae. That's algae is what protists. So I imagine a bacteria is fine, but man, that's just insane. Ugh, kind of, kind of, kind of gross. I mean, I don't know. Wow. By the way, in America, we do not use the term Oriental even anymore, which is because in East Asia they still use the term, and I know it's in certain European countries it's the term, but in America we don't use it, so I kind of chuckle at it. Um, so the I think the most the if I were to really say like what I think is most delicious, I mean, first of all, I'm a you know I love sushi a lot. If we're talking about Japan, if we're talking specifically like Chinese food, like Shanghainese food, I really love xiaolongbao, which are xiaolongbao are these little, they're called little dragon dumplings, but they're essentially these pork dumplings that are, it's kind of like noodle pork ball, and then there's like a soup in the middle. They're mainly in the breakfast, but they're really delicious. Um, Taiwanese cuisine, I don't know if there's anything specific to Taiwanese cuisine that I like. The Taiwanese are big into absorbing other people's cuisine and giving their own spin on it. So the Taiwanese have their own spin on hot pot and their own spin on little things about sushi and different stuff. But so I don't know if there's anything specific about Taiwan's food that I'm too into. Taiwanese cuisine is originally quite bland seafood kind of stuff, not dissimilar to Fujianese cuisine, but it's fine. But I mean, if we're talking like what Chinese food I think is, or what East Asian food I like, it's gonna be Sichuan food and Hunan food and you know Shanghainese dumplings, and you know I'm a huge fan of sushi, so it's probably it is my favorite food. Let's see, where are we? Let's get to. I'm way behind on everything. Um, wasn't our interference in Yugoslavia really ineffective? I don't know. I mean, which interference? The United States' interference in Yugoslavia? I mean, we ended up saving a lot of lives. Um, uh, I mean, I mean, the United States' intervention in Yugoslavia, like the 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 Serbians will disagree with me, but they were kind of killing some Albanians in Kosovo, and the U.S. intervened and protected them. It's Yugoslavia is like the U.S.'s only selfless, like purely moral war, where there wasn't any like economic reason, there's no imperialistic reason. It was just like, oh, people are dying, we're going to protect you, and then like we kind of did it. Um, so I don't. By the way, this is my Kosovo figurine, but you know I don't feel bad about U.S.'s involvement in Yugoslavia. I'm sorry. I know that it's like hot take, but I kind of don't like ethnic cleansing myself. Yeah. What do I think of the Palestinian-Israel conflict? I think Israel needs to get the fuck out of West Bank and Gaza and leave them alone. That's what I think. But that's so. This is a big thing, and this is a big thing about. Uh, we'll bring this back to Ukraine too. Um, so there's a lot of far right propaganda that if you can prove that the Ukrainians are bad people, that justifies like some sort of invasion, you know, and to take people's land and annex their country, you know. Um, and so when you talk to a person that doesn't want to give back the West Bank or just wants to take more and more land, they'll spend a lot of time telling you how horrible Palestinians are. Now I've spent good time in the West Bank, and I've and in Jordan, where 70% of the population is Palestinian. Um, and you have to ask yourself morally, like, um, the difference between good people and bad people uh, um, is not how you treat people you like; it's how you treat people you don't like. And I actually like Palestinians, but I'm saying there's a lot of things about the Palestinian culture that you could say are very different, and from how Westerners see things. You know, most Palestinians are very religious. You know, they have had a tough time getting education as well because they don't have very good schools. Schools are all set up by the UN, UNRWA, and the kids go to school for like 2 3 hours a day and in screaming classrooms, and they don't get much education at all. So they have crazy conspiracy theories. You know, there's a lot of Palestinians that are very difficult to get along with. You know, but the question is like, what? How do you treat people that you disagree with? You know, do you think that because everybody treats their friends well, bad people treat their friends well. You know, you know, but it's how you treat people that aren't your friends. Like, what do you think? Do you think it's like that if you prove to me that like a Palestinian is a bad person, which you're not going to because it's a diverse group of people. There's some wonderful, wonderful people in Palestine. Um, that it justifies like taking their land, kicking them off their land, like abusing them. Like, is it like? And so when you have these conversations with far right um, Israelis and far right Americans, because Americans are very much complicit in this. But like, if you, they'll spend a lot of time talking about, you know, the bad things that Palestinians do, and it's like, yeah, you know, that doesn't justify stealing their country. It doesn't justify stealing their land. You know, um, they're treated really poorly. Oh my gosh! If you just, I urge any of you to like go visit, go to the West Bank, go travel around. You'll meet, you know, some very friendly people who you know, whether you go to Bethlehem or Ramallah or Jericho, um, great people. And it's funny because it's like they're like, oh, you're from America, we love Americans. I'd be like, there's a lot of reasons that you should not like Americans, but you know, they'll welcome you in with open arms and be like, ah, it's so fantastic that you're here. I'm like, okay, thank you. But it's it just it's so simple to me. Like, take the Oslo lines, be like, that's Palestine, you're Israel, done. Like, stop it. Like, just stop building settlements. Just stop. Can you stop? Stop building. Stop. Oh God, no! You keep going. Oh, stop building that wall. Just stop. Just like, it'd be so easy. It's such an easy solution, and they keep not doing it because they don't want to give it back. The far right wing wants it all. They want it all. I mean, um, so I mean, like, do I think it's an apartheid state? Well, I mean, by definition, it's not a racial conflict, so it's not apartheid, but it's the equivalent. Like, you're talking about two groups of people with different rights. So no, it's rough. It's rough. And it's so simple in my mind, but people always try to make it so complicated. They're like, oh, but you know, these rights of return. I'm like, who cares? Just say Oslo lines. That's your country. Done. Like, it's so easy. Like, it's so easy. But but no, no. They want to make it complicated. Both, you know, I want to say both sides want to make it complicated. One group has so much more power than the other that there's not two sides. But um, what's your opinion of no fly zone? Um, I think the no fly zone is a good idea personally, but I think there's people above me that have more information on this kind of stuff. Um, but you know, we've put no fly zones in other countries and talked about them in other countries, and um, like Syria, for example. We and you know, but this is the whole thing, is that Putin put a line in the sand and said, "Ah, if you say no fly zone, then that's a declaration of war." And you're like, "Oh God." So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's some people above me, but it seemed like a good idea. But I'm a layman, you know. I'm sure it's something that I would say, yeah, it sounds like a pretty good idea. But if somebody explained it to me, like, no, actually, it's bad for this reason, I'd probably go off of that position pretty quickly. Like, it would be a tentative, like, yeah, that sounds okay, but yeah, yeah. What did I think of Picard season one, episode one? We Carmine and I did a podcast. We recorded one with Phil the Issues guy, and we are Phil the Issues guy, big Star Trek fan, and so that should be posted soon. But I thought it was better than first season. I'm getting my hopes up, but I got my hopes up last season, and I was crushed. But because every episode I was like, oh, this is going someplace, and then it wasn't going anyplace. So I'm optimistic. Like Patrick Stewart, he's acting much better. Um, uh, Absolutely selfish reasons for U.S. intervention in Yugoslavia. I mean, okay, if you can name one, I don't know what our selfish reason for going into Yugoslavia was. I mean, there's nothing economic, there's nothing political. Like, it didn't really help anybody. Um, Bill Clinton didn't get any brownie points from anybody for it. Uh, I mean, I could see maybe they wanted to test weaponry, but we were testing weaponry on Iraq at the same period of time with Operation Desert Fox. So I don't. I mean, if I'll keep my eye out for a response, but I don't know any. I can't think of any selfish reason. Let's say the theory that the Greyjoys get a dragon and the White Walkers get one. Who gets the third of Danny's dragons? Quentin, Faceless Man. Well, I imagine Danny would stay with one. Like that's what I think. Um, the but also I do wonder about if there's three dragons, like maybe like you'd think that if to have a dance of the dragons, you'd want Aegon to have a dragon, and then it seems like Victorian is set up to get a dragon, and then it seems like one if the White Walkers were going to get one, it would be one of the ones that dies, right? Would then be gotten after that, but like maybe somehow Aegon's dragon would be dead and then reanimated, but if his dragon's going to die, would it die in the south? And um, but but I think I the way I would kind of see it is that if Aegon is going to get a dragon, somehow a pro Aegon force who is in Slaver's Bay, needs to get it. The only one I can think of is Quentin. If Quentin is not alive, then Arch and Drink. Arch and Drink somehow steal a dragon and bring it to Aegon, would be my guess. But it seems like Aegon's got to get a dragon to have a dance. But I mean, otherwise, man, I don't know. Dance of the Dragons with one side not having dragons. Maybe, maybe. I mean, that's how the show did it, I guess. Uh, let's see here. Um, well, first off, there's um, hundreds of thousands of Jews in Palestine. They're in they're in settlements. So there's plenty of Jews in Palestine. Okay. But again, it's like it's using this equivalent of like, okay, say Palestinians wouldn't welcome Jews after having their country stolen and having years and years of abuse where you have to go through checkpoints to get anywhere. You have to go through hours of checkpoints, and with beat downs by soldiers and things like this. And just say the Palestinians have gotten to the point where, yeah, they just can't be around Jews. Okay. And I say Israelis, not Jews, because there's a difference between Jews and Israelis. Um, But say a Palestinian gets to the point where they don't want to be around them. Okay, fine. Say you've created a racist Palestinian. Do you have the right to steal a racist's land? Like, you know, like think about it like KKK in America. Do you think like people like KKK in America, Nazis in America, they're bad people? Like, does that mean I should be able to go in and just steal their shit and build a settlement on top of it? Like, come on. Like, no. Like, if this is how you treat people that you don't like, no. Like, what justifies your land getting stolen? What justifies that? What justifies living in a constant state of occupation and abuse with no end in sight ever? Like, what justifies that? What, because they're not friendly, because they don't like me? Oh, I beat this person up and they don't like me, therefore they deserved me beating them up. Like, come on. Like, it's this is the problem, right? This is the problem. And the what's sad is it'll take, and it's not even about like it'll take the, and it's not even Jews in America, because Jews in America are actually pretty liberal, but it's a lot of fundamentalist Christians that are driving this policy. So these fundamentalist Christians in America believe that Israel is the Holy Land, and it is going to start the 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 war, Armageddon, and that's going to be a good thing because Jesus will come back and stuff like that. They truly believe this, and so it's it's about controlling like the far right Christian population in America and convincing them that Israel needs to stop building settlements. But and then the population in Israel, like, I mean, the Israeli population is, it's a huge spectrum of beliefs, but it's about enough people caring. I last time I was in Israel, I had dinner with an Israeli friend of mine in Tel Aviv, and we're having dinner, and we're at this like hip bar restaurant, and there's music playing and people drinking and dancing. It was a lot of fun, and I was like, this is the future. Like, if the Palestinians are ever going to get freedom in their own homeland, and they're ever going to be treated well, it's these Tel Aviv people that are going to, like, these young Tel Aviv people that are going to vote in like some leader that's not just a piece of crap like Bibi. And he said to me, look around. Do you think these people care? They care about getting drunk and getting laid, And that was his response. And I looked, and I was just like, it's a fair point. Fair point. So it is true. I mean, it's like 15 miles away. People were like, just, being abused and living in poverty, and they don't care. They're drinking and having a good time. So, so it's time. If you were warped into a Song of Ice and Fire world, what's the top 10 places I'd visit? Oh, I mean, I'd want to go to Karth. I mean, that sounds like an interesting, wonderful place of like different cultures coming together and seeing different things. That'd be a fascinating place. I definitely want to go to Karth. I mean, I'd want to see the wall. I'd probably I think I'd probably want to hang out in Dorne for a while. Probably want to hang out in Sunspear. Seems like my kind of place. Drinks and sunshine and beautiful women. I mean, that seems like a nice place. I'd want to see the sights of Old Town. I'd probably want to visit the Erie, just see the mountains and see the castle in the Erie. That would be pretty interesting. I'd probably want to see Winterfell and the hot springs there. Volantis. I mean, even though it would be tough to see like all the slaves and the brutalization there, like, I'd probably want to see it just on curiosity. I'd probably just curiosity wise want to see like a pre-destruction Astapor as well. Just be like, oh my god, how fucked up is this place? You know. So the am I up to 10? The I'm trying to think anywhere else that's really I mean, I guess I'd want to see all the castles, right? I'd want to see Casterly Rock, and I'd want to see River Run. I want to see High Garden, just to see these massive castles. And oh, Storm's End. Yo, my God, I'd want to see Storm's End. That would be incredible. See that? I mean, that'd be like going to the Cliffs of Moher, but then with a massive like fortress on it. You guys all familiar with the Cliffs of Moher, right? This is my. So I went to Ireland for a wedding, and I only had a few days, and I asked somebody like, oh, if you have one place in Ireland that you can visit, what should I visit? And he's like, Cliffs of Moher. I was like, okay. So I drove, and I from Dublin to Cliffs of Moher, which is the opposite side of the country, and it was incredible. It was just just insane. Like the wind was so strong. It was like a 90 miles an hour wind and beautiful. But that Storm's End with that, with a huge fortress on top of it, it'd be incredible. Yeah, I mean let's see here, no fly zone. Yeah, I mean that's the thing is, I don't. An expert might know better than me on whether a no fly zone would be in the. That's the thing is it's the no fly zone versus the enforcement of a no fly zone, right? Right, knocking down an actual. That's the thing is we could claim a no fly zone, but then if the Russian plane goes in, is that is that yeah. Um, let's see. Now there is something because I was thinking about there was a time where if you can create a situation where it's not a human action that does the action, then you can um, kind of have plausible deniability about it. So there was a situation in the 70s where the Russians the Russians were threatening Iran, Shah, like during the 70s, the up until 79, the United States had their man, the Shah, ruling Iran, and the Russians always wanted to get into Iran, and so there's this like that was a front of the Cold War, and at one point the Russians were going into the Persian Gulf and doing something and threatening Iran. And I remember Carter's Secretary of Defense at the time decided to put in naval mines. Like he mined the water so that if a Russian, like if a, so that way, like if a Russian ship went in, well, it's their own fault that they like blew up because they went and ran into a mine, and then you could say that it wasn't an attack because it's purely defensive. Um, so I mean, Ukraine also should probably have a lot of landmines around for, um, but the if you could make something like a no-fly zone with a automatic kind of missile that shoots up, that's not within not any human control, you might be able to get around the whole idea that we attacked you. Well, it's like, no, we didn't attack you. You went into this like space that automatically like had a missile like go up. But it's something to think about. I'm not saying I'm an expert on this. I don't want nuclear war, but there are ways to have plausible deniability about destroying um, something in a defensive way and say, well, I didn't do it. You ran in there, and not start war. But it was something about like, naval mines in the Persian Gulf at the or the at the at the time. Um, let's see here. Um, the well, I mean, there's a long history of this. So I mean, the Zionist movement like began, um, at the beginning of the 19th century, and so there was this idea that, and this even I think it even started at the end of the Ottoman period. So the end of the Ottoman period, the Ottomans had become rather tolerant, with religious freedom. Um, there was a kind of very liberal policy among the Ottomans near the end of their time, and then uh, a small amount of Jews started moving back to Jerusalem during that period, and then when the British took the area from the Ottomans, more started moving in, um, and so, but of course, the lion's share was the refugee movement after World War II, um, and so that kind of shifted everything, uh, with numbers. Um, but again, like it's these weird. I actually think that these terms like Arab and Jew are really kind of silly terms, because you're talking like Jew as a religious uh, breakdown, and Arab is a linguistic breakdown. So, you're kind of comparing. Like, I understand that this is how they break things down, but when they start saying like Arab and Jew, like, because then they'll start saying, oh, the Arabs have all these other countries, and you're like, well, you're talking about Arabic, like people with languages that are Arabic roots. Like, it's like saying like people that speak Romance languages have lots of countries, and therefore like Spanish people can just live in France, and stuff like that. Um, so it's a little weird when they start using these terms like Arab and Jews, but but yeah, it's the you definitely have these refugee Jews, being the lion's share that come in. A lot of people debate like the importance of this kind of early Zionist period. Like, yeah, they set up some neighborhoods and some institutions, but it's just the vast majority of people came after World War II. So why are we even talking about like the small amount that was there before? Because it just doesn't compare. We're talking like millions like coming versus like when a couple 100,000 before. It's stuff like that. Um, but yeah, I mean that's the thing, is they were completely fine with it. It was kind of a it was at the time, like, keep in mind that before, the creation of Israel, uh, the Muslims and the Christians were the ones that had the big beef with each other, and Muslims saw Jews as their kind of good friends because the cultures were more similar. They're both pretty conservative. They didn't eat pork, that kind of thing. It's very similar marriage rights, stuff like this, and that the Christians were the problem. Now it's like the Christians are like they're somewhat neutral party in the Middle East. Uh, while there's this more of an like most of the countries in the Middle East have an abstract hatred of Israel. I mean, there's so few Jews now in the, Middle East, other Middle Eastern countries, that most people have never met one, so they kind of have this abstract hatred of Israel. But most of these other countries in the Middle East also have a strong hatred of Palestinians. So it's Palestinians have a rough situation. Hated at home, hated abroad. Um, let's see here. Oh, Ukraine doesn't allow super chats. Okay. Um, trying to. Hey. Okay. Um. Okay. Let's see. Hey, press. Been covering this situation. Sadly, I have to watch in 480p in the basement. Yeah, I'm amazed. I'm amazed that wherever you are, you know, electricity and internet. Um, I think the entire West is kind of amazed that Ukraine has been doing so well. Um, and let's see, Ukraine's oil production peaked in the 70s, went down a lot. Has some potential around Crimea. Yes, Russia's been there 8 years now. Um, Too bad YouTube does a lot of super chats. Preston never reads ordinary people's messages. I just feel guilty. Um, Yugoslavia was the most socialist state. Destroying a symbol of lust prosperity was extremely important to the U.S. Um, the It would have been if it were in the 80s or before, but we have to understand that like Yugoslavia was like both Bosnia and Kosovo. I'm not saying that the United States didn't do whatever clandestine things in the 80s and before against Yugoslavia, but specifically with the Bosnia and Kosovo situations, you know, Clinton was president at the time, and he was not really that interested in destroying socialist states. That was not really his policy. In fact, Clinton was spent his presidency trying to reach out to Russia and China and other socialist states to have more trade and exchange. It was it was not in Bill Clinton's like mindset. Um, so I mean, his motivations were like, you know, you can say a lot about Bill Clinton. Like he sexually harassed people um, right and left. Uh, but I, you know, I would say that his motivations for Yugoslavia were pretty pure. Um, but there were economic reasons. They needed enemies to keep military industrial complex going after historic enemy fell apart. Well, the I'm trying to think who would we'd be selling weapons to. so the big purchaser of U.S. weapons are Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Taiwan, Israel, Turkey. Those are our main. That's our bread and butter. That's and under Clinton, we did have expansion of arms sales to UAE. There definitely was a lot of arms sales to the Middle East during that time. So it was definitely something that Bill Clinton was thinking about. But um, Kosovo and Bosnia, you're talking about like small arms kind of stuff. It's not stuff that it's not. Yes, like U.S. manufacturers do make M4s and things like that, but the big money stuff are like, you know, jet fighters, anti-aircraft missiles, things like this. These are the systems that we make a lot of money on. So it's I I don't buy that it would be for that because Kosovo and Bosnia just don't have the money to buy anything big. So, you know, like one bomb that we drop on Serbia is worth far more than any money that we'd be making from small arms sales to the countries. It's so I don't buy it. Like I understand that, like I'm sure this is some line of this is something going around because like it's true in other places. You go like, oh well, the United States is interested in having arms sales in different places, and you know they're interested in destabilizing regions in order to have arms sales. Um, I mean, I don't know if they'd be interested in destabilizing regions for arms sales, but they're definitely interested in arms sales. Like I think that's true that they're interested in arms sales. And so I think it's faking a connection. It's saying, okay, well, the US is known to be interested in X, therefore they must be interested in X in this situation. Um, but it's kind of like, well, Preston loves to eat sushi. So, and this person just like stole a bunch of sushi from this restaurant. I guess it's because Preston loves sushi, he did it. No, like I don't necessarily see the connection. Like it's like I say, like it's really tough in my mind to see like what the benefit would be for how much money we spent on both Bosnia and Kosovo. Um, I it was really like also you got to get into like Bill Clinton's like psyche. So one of the things that haunts Bill Clinton, and when they talk to him like about his presidency, is that he's very much haunted about Rwanda and how he had a chance to help people in Rwanda and he hesitated because America was very so we had a disaster in Somalia where we had sent people in uh, H.W. Bush had sent some people into Somalia, and then um, they were there for a while, and then the Black Hawk Down situation happened under Bill Clinton, and and America was that under Clinton or I think Black Hawk Down had it might have still been under HW, but it was right around the border time of the power change uh, of Somalia. And so because America isn't too nuanced, 1994. No, it was 1994. I'm doing my math. Yeah, that would be under Clinton. So after Black Hawk Down, America, because we're not very nuanced, didn't understand the difference between different parts of Africa. And so when Rwanda happened, we could have gone in and helped people in Rwanda, and we didn't because Clinton was very sheepish about helping people in Africa because the Black Hawk Down situation had happened, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, Africa! It's so uncivilized, and if we send troops to Africa, they're all just going to get killed, and it's going to be horrible." So he didn't help people right when the genocide started. And so after that, and according to him, this is just like still not helping people in Rwanda, like haunts Bill Clinton. And so when things happened in Yugoslavia, he was like, "Fuck, I'm not going to like do this again. I'm not going to like let people get killed." And so I don't know. It's that's how I'm kind of seeing it. I mean, I haven't seen a compelling argument that there was some sort of selfish American reason for Yugoslavia. So, and keep in mind, I've gotten into some screaming matches with Serbians. Like one of my wife's good friends is a Serbian American, and man, like you cannot bring up anything Yugoslavia with her. She will physically fight you. It's very emotional for her. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't know. I kind of agree with helping people not get ethnically cleansed. But I don't know. Um, People bring up this too. The thing is I was actually like traveling. Um, I think it was when I first moved to China. It was just a little bit after, and people asked me about. They're like, "Oh no, we thought it was Kosovo was about Monica Lewinsky." They said the same thing about like him bombing Iraq at certain times. But I'm trying to think like Kosovo happened after the impeachment trial was already done, right? Um, it's like the Bill Clinton impeachment trial was in January of 99, and I want to say the Kosovo War was in June. So he had already won. Like he was out of it. And so there was nothing I mean the idea. Oh, well, but maybe she was. I understand what you're saying here. That she was still angry at him, and it was Hillary somehow wanted to protect the Kosovar and not Bill. But I have heard that that Bill Clinton was trying to distract from that, and it's like, well, the problem is that the timeline doesn't add up. So that's the kind of thing. Um, let's see, where are we? And Tel Aviv people aren't the best voters. I wish. I mean, I wish the whole country would be better voters. Yeah, yeah. I mean, Israeli voting Israeli politics is super complicated and weird and um uh let's see. Huh. This is a good point. Um Turkey did shoot down a Russian plane in Syria, and Turkey is still a thing somehow. You know what? You're absolutely right. I remember this. And Turkey, NATO country, they shot down a Russian plane, and yeah, man, I and the interesting thing, Turkey is the example because I brought up like whether Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia could join the EU, and whether they could join NATO. And it's like Turkey has breakaway, independence areas as well, and they're still a NATO power. Um, and we somehow make it work. Um, let's see here. Uh. Oh, somebody asked if I'd. Oh, I definitely go to a shy too. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, the Stinger missiles. Um, this might have to do with like defensive stuff. Also, like you give all the ability to the Ukraine to do the shooting down, and then you don't have to worry about things. Um, what do I think of happening to Putin if Russia fails in Ukraine? I mean, Russia will fail in Ukraine. This is 100%. The question is whether they're going to fail in a month or if they're going to fail in 10 years. But they're going to fail in Ukraine. I think that's, but you're definitely just going to see, you're going to see, well, one, you're going to see the Russian people hurt um, first. We're going to see a hit to the international economy. Um, these sanctions are just going to, they're going to get worse and worse. We're going to kick Russia out of more and more organizations. The Russian people are going to hurt. Hopefully, you know, best case scenario, the Russian people revolt and Putin is somehow driven from power. I don't know if that's going to happen. You know, if we, but it's like they become more and more isolated, and then I think eventually, like Russia will pull out, and then slowly the probable situation is eventually Russia will fail. Maybe it'll take years, but they'll pull out, and then they'll slowly start getting back into organizations again. But I think they've yeah. I think there's a 0% chance that Russia will succeed in Ukraine. There's a 0% chance. The only success I could see them pulling off is somehow a bad negotiation situation where Ukraine cedes the eastern part of the country and then they pull out, and somehow the world is like, okay, fine, you can come back into your organizations. But it would take really poor bargaining on both the West and Ukraine's part to get to that. So, but I mean, I definitely think that they've just failed. Like they're never going to be able to hold Ukraine. They just can't do it. And if they really tried and wanted to do it, they would bankrupt their country. Like it's just impossible. Ukraine's too big. Um, they're not as Russia loving as Putin thought. Like Putin thought that he was going to be greeted by liberators. I mean, if America can't hold Afghanistan and do anything in Afghanistan, like how can Russia hold Ukraine? Like how can it's just not possible. Not possible in today's world. And America wasn't getting hit with sanctions, like it's just not going to happen. Um there will always be a nuclear threat. Neville Chamberlain appeasement plan is not a great approach. Yeah, that's what I agree. And my fear is that somebody will say, okay, like let's appease Russia and give them Eastern Ukraine and promise that Ukraine won't be in NATO. Like my fear would be that, but I don't think that's going to happen right now. Like right now, I think Ukraine's been really emboldened. Um, I don't know if they were even expecting the amount of Western support that they've gotten. And once those missiles get in, like that's the thing is like even let's say bad situation happens this week. Let's say Kiev falls, Eastern Ukraine falls, right? You still have a Ukrainian government in Lviv that is going to be receiving military aid, and having this huge population of fighters that are just going to be a thorn in Russia's side for years. It was just going to be I really hope that people don't have an appeasement situation at the table. I think that's what Putin wants. He wants some sort of appeasement, but I think that right now Ukraine thinks they have a really good hand. So we'll see. Carmine and I did do a podcast on Raised by Wolves season 2. I think it'll be out soon. I have to talk to Carmine about when it's coming. But yeah, we've been watching Raised by Wolves season 2. Oh my god. It's just did part 1 on I'm trying to think if Carmine's channel, if Raised by Wolves part 1 is no, he hasn't posted it. So yeah, we definitely talked about the beginning of we did a podcast on the beginning of Raised by Wolves. Maybe it's just on his Patreon, and then we just watched the most recent and talking about it. It's amazing how many parallels to Ice and Fire are in Raised by Wolves this season. Whether it goes with like telepathic messages causing people to like go crazy, or people becoming trees, or eating Jojen paste. Like it's over the top. It's over the top. USA has gone into Somalia a bunch of times, but yeah, we pulled out of Somalia and then went back into Somalia after the Black Hawk Down situation. Oh, hey Carmine. Hold on, I got you.
Your hey Facebook message. I just saw your Facebook message.
Oh, okay, yeah.
No, I've been awake this entire time. No, I need to put out that Raised by Wolves stuff. I told you I've been trying to fix this computer for a long time now, and I have it finally fixed. So I'm gonna give you the Picard, and then we're gonna dish out the Men of the West collab, and then we still got to talk about. We got to do like a 5-minute Raised by Wolves discussion, because that last episode, holy shit!
Oh my god,
what was that?
Yeah.
What did I tell you? That it was the prequel to Ice and Fire.
Yeah. And sometimes never kill man. About.
You know more than I do about it.
Let me answer this one really quick. You're conflating. So this one, he says, how the hell does Clinton bombing a hospital and pharmaceutical factory in Sudan that led to mass immiserating fit into Preston's weird haunted in Africa narrative? I'm talking about putting troops on the ground. The pharmaceutical factory, which no one knows which way it actually went. It's because the thing got blown up. But during Clinton's term, like he thought that that Al Qaeda was operating out of this factory, so he bombed this factory in Sudan, and then people said, "Oh, it was only pharmaceuticals," and so no one really knows one way or the other what it was. Maybe it was pharmaceuticals, maybe it was Al Qaeda was there, but nonetheless, it had nothing to do with like Rwanda, which would have been about putting U.S. troops on the ground, which was the whole thing about Black Hawk Down, like sending a Tomahawk missile. Like America sends Tomahawk missiles all over the place. There's a big difference between that and putting U.S. troops and how the opinion to the American public. American public doesn't care where we send missiles. American public cares where we send American troops. So yeah, that's what I'm smoking. Like it's a huge difference between sending troops and we eventually did send people. Eventually did send peacekeepers to Rwanda. It was just much later after the genocide all happened, and so. Anyway, Carmine, I'm sorry to cut you off. I saw something that pissed me off.
What time is it over there in Taiwan? Isn't it like
It's 12:15. I gotta go to bed pretty soon. But yeah.
No, but Raised by Wolves. We have Swishers. We have
Oh my god.
Weirwood Trees.
There's
we
Squishers.
have Jojen Paste. A friend of mine who hasn't seen season 2, but he's read the books. I told him Jojen Paste. You can expect that. And he's like, no, not Jojen. Yeah, we got Jojen Paste. What else?
Definitely Jojen Paste. There's so from first season we had devolution of people after receiving telepathic messages, which was like very George R. R. Martin and Seven Times Never Kill Man, where the people start devolving because. And so we definitely had that of some sort. Like there was this idea that there was a civilization there, but then they started devolving into like monsters. This season, they might be the same thing, but they're in the sea now. But yeah, and then the girl becoming a tree and the judge.
Whoa! We're kind of spoiling this.
I know it's such a bonkers show. Oh my god, it's so bonkers.
I know I hate it, but I love it at the same time. Every week I'm on that.
Just can't. There's too much going on too. Do they need that android girl? That faceless android girl? The faceless man?
What was that? Oh, there it is. There's the face. There it is. The assassin. There it is. There it is. I'm putting it down. Hold on.
It's too bad that no one is watching Raised by Wolves but us. Oh man. Yeah. If Crimean Tatars returned to Crimea, who would be the subject of genocide, deportation, and send the colonial Russians back? Would that be justice or tragedy? So, I don't know if you Carmine, have you ever watched the YouTuber Vosh, the streamer?
Isn't he a streamer?
He's a Twitch streamer, and he streams on both YouTube and Twitch.
I know of him. I know that he has like controversies with is it Destiny?
Yeah, he has this long. It's funny because their political beliefs aren't too far from each other, but they hate each other on a personal basis, and so they're constantly like destroying each other, even though they agree on most things. So this gets into there's this subject that's floating around that people talk about land back activism, and it's tough because it's something that's mainly philosophical, because it's like, very rarely, if ever, are people ever given their land back. Like once somebody is ethnically cleansed or pushed off land, it's really difficult to get it back. Like take the United States. Like imagine if somebody were like, yes, we need to give the United States back to the American Indians. Like, is that really going to happen? Or even, some people talk about like, even when you think of a kind of small, simple situation with like, I think I have my headphones like attached to my chair, which is causing me trouble here. Hold on. Oh, I was about to like knock over my computer. What the hell is that? See, causing a bad situation here. There we go. Um, so the so Vosh was in this debate with this other YouTuber named Professor Flowers, and Professor Flowers believed that South Africa should be given back. Well, she doesn't know the history of South Africa, so she kind of believed that like it should be given back to black people who could then decide what to do to white people. And Vosh is like, wait, does that mean like you're open to them being ethnically cleansed? And though she didn't use the word ethnic cleanse, she was essentially saying the same thing. Like if they want to kick out the white people, they have the right to kick out the white people. And he's like, well, I'm against ethnic cleansing. And so there's this big battle. So many YouTube videos about like, you know, what ethnic cleansing is and what land back activism is and things like that. But it gets really complicated. But the original people of South Africa, by the way, were I want to say their name correctly because if I don't look it up, I'm going to use it wrong. But it was the Khoisan. The Khoisan were the original people of South Africa, and they're a very, very small group. But you know, it was theirs originally before the Bantu people kind of came down. And so we kind of have this kind of similar situation with the Tatars and all sorts of people around. Like I don't think there's much hope, for example, of like Palestinians ever getting any of their land in Israel proper back. It's pretty rough. But because then once you start going like intergenerationally, it gets super complicated. Because once you start talking about like, okay, what do you do with, let's say you were into giving land back or kicking people out. What do you do with all of the families that are in interracial relationships, inter-ethnic relationships, you know, so many people are intermarried that it becomes impossible. And this is, of course, the intent when you move people in and things like this, is that you want to make it complicated so that they can never be kicked out. But it's, you know, it's this ridiculous idea that like you could ever, you know, tell white people to leave when like so many of them are in marriages with black people and have interracial children. Like there's no more of like sending people back or moving people in, and you know it's impossible to fix in my mind. So it is a real shame that the Tatars were essentially pushed out of Crimea. But I don't know what the solution would be in reverse. Like where would you put Russians then, you know, if you're going to kick them out and things like that. So I don't know. It's land back activism is very complicated, and I don't think I can see any solutions with it. When all these peoples end up getting really mixed. The only solution is to have no borders.
Would you say it's a tough situation? It's tough.
Yeah, that's my. It's a drinking game. Am I saying it's tough?
I just love how it's always white people bitching about this type of stuff. Just why don't we get a general consensus of the people actually affected by this? You know, let's see what they want.
Yeah, it's tough.
And how far back do you go? Because if you go back hundreds of years, people have stolen other people's lands for the longest time. How far back do we go?
Yeah, I actually I visited Cyprus and went to northern Cyprus. And yeah, it's on both. I mean, we say on both sides, but this is a situation that on both sides, like people's land was taken. The Greek Cypriots like to claim that the Turks shipped in a bunch of new Turks in order to take land and stuff like that, and maybe that happens some. I don't know, but it's pretty tough. I would say that like when I've met these old Greek Cypriots that are like, I had a house up in the north and they stole it from me, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, you're never getting it back. Okay. It's just, you're never getting it back. It's just a loss. Okay. I'm sorry. But northern Cyprus, that seems like an almost like I think that's a really solvable situation. Like I think that one. I think that you could just, if Northern Cyprus could be a country, and then just be admitted into the EU. Um, I think that would. I think it'd all be fixed, and then we just forget. We just go, okay, I'm sorry that some people's lands were taken. Maybe there can be like a general EU fund where we just reimburse people that can prove that their land was stolen or something, and then they can be happy. That's a small enough situation with a small enough group of people that I think that the world could solve the Northern Cyprus, Greek Cyprus situation pretty easily. But if anybody wanted to, because it's also like the Northern Cypriot people they're really liberal. They elect their own president. They're pro democracy. They're they're it would be so easy to absorb them into the EU and deal with the situation. But yeah. Um, yeah, this what about a coup? This is probably the worst case situation in Ukraine, is if some sort of group within the government is somehow paid off and overthrows something. But of course, the best case scenario is if something in Russia has a coup. But I don't know. Uh, Putin seems to have such. I just assume that Putin has such a huge stranglehold over things. Favorite Stephen King book is definitely Dark Tower. You've read Dark Tower, Carmine?
Pieces here and there. I know what it's about. I personally liked Cell, but
Mm.
I didn't like the film adaptation. I thought that was a lot of Stephen King adaptations to film kind of sucks. Like the Langoliers. You ever see that one?
Yeah, yeah,
Not a good one. Or the original It. Not a good one.
yeah, yeah. Did we? I just saw the Raised by Wolves. Is that on my channel? Did I post Raised by Wolves on my channel? Or Raised by, did we
I don't think you did.
did we upload? Did I not?
No, we not yet. Not
Okay,
yet.
we did not
We
put up
recorded that when I was in the
I think
middle of it.
last season's Raised by Wolves was on my something.
Yes.
Yeah. Israeli politics is complex. I'm perplexed about the U.S. system. Yes, yeah. I mean, it's. I would say that the U.S. is simpler in terms of politics in the case that we have two camps, and yes, like who gets elected and how, on a national and state level, and how the electoral college works can be a little tricky, but at least you kind of know that there are just two camps, and if you kind of know that we have one party that's the rural far right, um, uh, you know, religious redneck party, and the other one is the snooty liberal urban, um, uh, neoliberal party. That's then that's all there is, in America, and we don't really have what the Europeans would call a left wing. Um, it's Carmine's real name, Car Guy. Oh, Carmine's real name is Carmine. Everyone knows that. It's a very, very Portuguese name. Everyone compares Ukraine to Vietnam or Afghanistan, but it's more of a Bay of Pigs situation. Hmm. Um. That's interesting. That's interesting. So Bay of Pigs, of course, was this um, situation where the United States attempted to um, kind of take over Cuba. I don't want to. Let's see here. I mean, I say the United States. They're U.S. backed, but Bay of Pigs. I'm going to read the Wikipedia so I don't get it wrong. Bay of Pigs was a failed landing operation in the southwest coast of Cuba by Cuban exiles. who opposed Fidel Castro, covertly financed and directed by the U.S. government. Um, the operation took place at the height of the Cold War, and its failure led to a major shifts in international relations between Cuba, the United States, and the Soviet Union. Um, I mean, I see what you're saying with in that there's historical and ethnic connections between the Ukrainians and the Russians, which is pretty obvious, But the versus Vietnam and Afghanistan, where these are distant cultures to the Americans who went over there. But at least with Bay of Pigs, like I don't know, at least with Bay of Pigs, we like got out and didn't have to be in Cuba, like wasting our money for years and years and years, as opposed with like Afghanistan and Vietnam. Like I understand the point. The point's accurate, but it's also accurate to say that these like quagmires that somebody's stuck in that like destroys the country is like something as well. So Carmine, how did you see this one on screen? The squishers took my baby.
That was insane. What the? I hate. Oh my god.
A dingo ate my baby. Oh, squishers took my baby. Where was the? I mean, props to having a somewhat realistic birth on the. I mean, certainly more realistic than most births you see on TV. But at the same time, like that baby was huge. And where was the placenta? Where was the placenta? I do like her like chewing off the umbilical cord like ancient times, But yeah. Afghanistan is Russia's Afghanistan. Ukraine is Afghanistan. Yeah, it's true. Ukraine is Afghanistan's Afghanistan. Where's the Witcher podcast? Where we eventually... I've been pestering Carmine for literally years about doing the Witcher
coming.
Podcast.
It's soon. I promise. I really want to get to it, but we have so much shit. There's Picard, Raised by Wolves. What's the next? You want to? Oh, I was gonna ask you. Did you want to cover Halo? It's gonna suck. It's gonna be complete trash.
I mean, I've never played the video. I mean, I've played the video game like twice. I don't want to say I've never played it.
It's gonna suck. I already know that already. It's gonna suck. So what else do we have besides Raised by Wolves, Picard, and we gotta get back to Fire and Blood?
Moon Knight at the end of March. There's gonna be Moon Knight.
Oh yeah, Moon Knight, and then towards the end of Moon Knight, what? Obi-Wan comes out May 20 something.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm sure there's something in April I'm missing. There always is. HBO, they've got to have something for April. Maybe Westworld?
Westworld is coming out in June, July.
Oh, then if Westworld's coming out in June, July, then House of the Dragon's definitely coming out in the fall. There's no way.
Yeah, I mean, there's the different ideas of whether or not maybe they're splitting House of the Dragon into two parts, which might make sense. Like when I originally saw, like I originally figured they were doing flashbacks, but some people think that maybe it's going to be, rather than flashbacks, like early Rhaenyra, late Rhaenyra, and therefore they could split the season 5 episodes, and then put like 5 before Lord of the Rings and 5 after or something. I don't know.
That'll be weird. I don't see how they could do that successfully and get away with it. They would have to catch lightning in a bottle for that to be very successful.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I don't know what. I mean, I think they'll just have to wait until Lord of the Rings is over, and we're looking at like an October, November release. Because I don't think it's like, first of all, like they're not going to put it at the same time as Westworld, and I think they're waiting for Comic-Con And so then it's like, what are you really going to put it up against Lord of the Rings? I don't think so. But and then we just have to wait, until Lord of the Rings is at least halfway over. I don't know. So we'll see. Yeah.
One show we gotta cover though is The Boys when that comes back. The Boys is just
If it's weekly, yeah. Like I don't like I think first season they did all at once, so you couldn't really talk about it.
second season they did a weekly and everybody got upset. They're gonna do it weekly again because weekly it stays in your mind longer.
Hmm. Yeah, it's just more fun to talk about it week to week, like what you're going to think about, um, what you think is going to happen, things like that. Yeah.
Also, don't fall for that trap right there. That person
What, Boys
right
season three
above.
get hype?
No, no, that person right there, 11. I
Oh,
can't say I don't have my glasses on. Don't fall for the Elden Ring trap. Do not play that. That is George R. R. Martin didn't put that much effort or stuff in there. He just probably wrote like something in the lore and that's it. So they could put his name on there. That's what he's doing. That's what they do.
yeah. I mean, I have to look like more into it, but yeah, I think like, you hire him to come in for an afternoon and then you say, what do you think about this and this? And then he kind of says something in an afternoon and then they go, okay, we got his name.
No, but don't fall for that trap. Don't play that game. You will be stuck forever.
Oh, it's addictive, eh?
Very, very, very difficult. Very difficult game.
uh, well, it's getting somewhat late for me. Anybody have any last important questions before I head to bed? I mean, this I'm looking. I know that we're well in here. The boy, I like the boys fine. I don't like it as much as some people. You know, um, I think it's okay, but um, I think the dark superhero thing has been done so much that I'm kind of done with it. Though I think the boys is so much better than the comic book. The comic book is just worthless in my mind. But the boys, I think is
Edgy.
pretty. I think boys is pretty good. But um, I don't know. I don't think it's like the best thing ever.
That's one thing where the adaptation like is better than the source material. Same thing with Handmaid's Tale. You
Yeah.
gotta watch that if you haven't seen that yet.
What is? Oh, somebody brought up this a Sackville Baggins meme. Are you aware of this?
Kinda.
What is the Sack hiding from Sackville Baggins? So Sackville. So at some point in the movie, say this is like I don't know this meme yet, but like at some point Frodo hides from Loblia Sackville Baggins, and I think this has gotten um I don't know. Some people say there's some sort of meme about it, but I haven't been figuring what it's about. Oh, why didn't Bilbo use the ring more? I don't know. Um, let me answer some. There's some good ones here that I actually want to talk about. Let's see here. Should the world recognize Somaliland? Um, it's well, real quick. Did I talk about Ukraine implication Taiwan? I did earlier in the stream. I talked about Taiwan, China. I don't think there's many implications. Actually, I think Taiwan is too difficult to invade, and I don't think China is going to take any really do anything. They kind of see the situation different from Ukraine. Should the world recognize Somaliland? Somaliland is a breakaway area in Somalia. Um, I don't know if it gives anybody advantage. I know the U.S. wouldn't, because the U.S. is putting far too many resources in trying to make Mogadishu stable, and I think recognized Somaliland would go against that. Um, but uh, they have a stable democracy. But I don't know if there's any advantage to anybody. I mean, we all benefit from a stable Mogadishu. So maybe if Mogadishu got stable, then I'd start thinking about it before saying like, oh, your country is in pieces. Um, I'm really doubting Winds of Winter is going to come out. Yeah, if we don't get an announcement before the end of 2022, I think I think I'm done. That's it. Have I
Don't
talked about the
say
Watchmen
that.
film? Worst film of all time.
We discussed it briefly when we did the
We did.
Watchmen.
We did talk about the Watchmen
Film.
film when we did our Watchmen podcast. Um, I think it's about as I think it's as good as it can be, considering that the creator, uh, does not is like has the exact opposite viewpoint on the world. Right? Like Zack Snyder, like is the exact opposite beliefs of Alan Moore, and so it's really just like it's amazing that the film. I'm amazed that the film is as good as it is. I'm not saying it's a great film, but I think it's like forgettable. It's like okay enough that it's forgettable, which is almost like a worse a worse thing, Oh. The thing was about my no admittance except on party business. I'm sorry. So I started adding some junk. You know how a lot of people have streamers have some junk in the back, so I got some junk in the back.
Yeah. What's that maze thing? It looks like the maze from Westworld
It
season
is.
one. You know what I'm talking
It's
about?
my Westworld maze.
Oh, is it actually?
Yeah.
Nice. That's very
It's
cool.
my Westworld maze. I got my mask that I won a mask contest once. I made this. I got um, some Egyptian jars. I got a Bulgarian jar. Got a little wood guy from Sri Lanka. That's my Mecca. That's my Kaaba Quran from Mecca. And
How can you be an Ice and Fire content creator and not have like Ice and Fire memorabilia in the back? Well,
I mean, I'm
where's the
gonna work
scores?
on this. Okay, this is like makeshift for now. Okay, I've got this is a baby gate that I've put up sideways that I'm gonna hang
Oh,
some things on.
do me a favor. You can't have like because every Ice and Fire streamer they'll have like the fucking Long Claw and Oathkeeper swords in the back. Don't do swords. Do like Quate's mask or like
Hmm.
just have like a just have Jojen paste right in the
This could
back.
very be much like Quake's mask. So this I'm very proud of this. So I tied this. Damn it! I tied this in. Um, but this mask has some like glitter and stones on
Hmm.
it, and I made this for a masquerade ball, um, and I could not wear it because it was actually like too heavy. But what you gonna do? Ugh, I tied that on, and I almost like wrecked it by pulling it. um, a lot of people tell me that if it weren't for like if it weren't for the fan community with ASOIAF, like and like the theorizing, that they would have been gone a long time ago. I mean, I certainly would have been.
There's a lot of truth in that too.
you know, like come on.
It doesn't have the legacy that Lord of the Rings did because the Peter Jackson trilogy is just it's impeccable that it goes on forever. Game of Thrones not as much.
This is exactly how I feel about Watchmen. Yeah, it's okay for him not understanding the book. It's exactly like to not understand anything. Um, let's see. How do you feel about the fact that my grandpa fought for Germany and Ukraine in the 1940s? I mean, everybody's got grandpas. I mean, the I can tell like look we can't we we're only responsible for ourselves here. Like I can't say that what one's parents do or grandparents do. I can't blame somebody for that. Um, my it's funny. My grandfather though my grandfather was a bomber in World War II, and his whole thing. He told me the story because he just loved to talk about it so much because this is like an American thing, right? He would never shut up about being in the Army Air Corps. And he said, I asked him like, well, what'd you do in the war? Did you kill anybody? And he said, well, it was weird. I joined, and they lined us up and they said, count off 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And so I did, and I got a one. And all the ones got to go to the Atlantic front, and all the twos got to go to the Pacific front. And I remember just like giving a big sigh of relief, like, oh my God, thank goodness. Um, and he said all he did was he'd go on these planes and they would drop these balloons into the water, into the ocean, and they'd shoot out sonar. And if anything came back that something was down there, they would then carpet bomb the water. And so I was like, "Oh, did you kill anybody?" He's like, "I have no idea." He's like we drop the balloons, and then sometimes like they'd signal something, and then we drop a bunch of bombs. But we have no idea if like the balloon was signaling like a school of fish. I mean, if it was a German U-boat or something, like we don't know if we hit it. Like it was really like that was all we did. We just put down a balloon in the middle of the ocean, and then if it signaled something back, we'd carpet bomb the ocean. And that was it. So I don't know. It was a weird time. Weird time. Uh, um, huh. Went to a pro-peace, pro-Ukraine demonstration. A little worrying about how many people were holding flags that were banderitas. Wow. Yeah, well, you know, that kind of thing happens. Um, but like I say, just because something is one element of something, you can't blame everything. But I mean, imagine if everybody hated me for the 48% of America that voted for Trump. I don't know, but um, you know, I can't blame Carmine for every single poor Brazilian leader. Has there ever
I
been
mean,
a
yeah.
good Brazilian president?
Uh, my grandmother, she used to like Lula way back when. I guess, he was cool. I have no idea. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know
mean he
much
was
about
more just
Brazilian
corrupt,
history.
right? You know.
Suppose I don't know. You'd have a better chance asking another Brazilian person who knows this crap. I'm sure they're hiding in the comment section like cockroaches. They usually are
Yeah.
hiding in
Uh,
there, asking you to come to Brazil for some reason.
yeah. Um, what's the next A Song of Ice and Fire series on? Um, I've thought about it a little bit. I haven't settled on anything yet. I think I'm gonna probably, after I finish Time Traveling Bran, try to get into uh, over analyzing House of the Dragon for a little bit, and then come up with something I want to do. Um, I mean, for a long time, I've been wanting to do one on Stannis and Davos, and for a long time, I've been wanting to do something on Roose Bolton, but I'm not sure. But we'll see, we'll see. But I'll probably focus on House of the Dragon for a while, just because people are like, "Oh, you're never going to catch up to like before the show starts," and I'm like, "Well, I'm going to try. I'm going to try to get as far as I can." So, um, so we'll see. So we'll see. Um, let's see. Killed a lot of squishers. Who knows? Who knows? My grandfather, he was a funny one. But like I say, like, he lived in Ohio. He was from Michigan and lived in Ohio, and like when I talked to him, he seemed like a super racist. And I brought this up to my father, and my father's like, you got to remember, like among his group of friends, he was the liberal one. Like he would like, stand. I was like, oh God, you know, like he would stand up for. He would be like, hey, I've met some black people, and they're not all bad. They're not all stupid. And like all of his friends would be like, no, every single black person is stupid. And you're like, that's like the liberal position, like, so like you got to remember, like among his group, he was like the standout. He would it's like well, but he was my grandpa. Love him anyway. That's the way grandpas are. Why is Stannis popular among friends and not in Westeros? um I think it's primarily because Stannis is seen through the eyes of Davos and Jon, and he's not. Neither Davos or Jon is unkind to Stannis. They, I mean, especially Davos, like loves Stannis, and Jon is fairly. I mean, he's fairly fond of Stannis, like just because Stannis is on his side. And so when you have like two protagonists, like Stannis, like that, it's hard. It's hard not to. Now, had everything been through the eyes of Asha, for the whole time, it might have been a different story. But but Stannis is a completely different character. Like when you read him in the Davos chapters versus the Jon chapters versus the Asha chapters. So it's interesting. But yeah, but I think that's the main reason, is just the who we see it through. All right, guys. Oh yes, and Crescent, my boy Crescent. Poor Crescent. That's the one thing I wish that we heard more of Stannis talking about Crescent, but we'll see. Okay, guys, I'm gonna head to bed, but thank you all for being with me this long, and just listen to me talk random shit about stuff.
Spicy
All right.
politics.
Yeah, I know, spicy politics. This was mostly politics, a little bit of ice and fire, but just what was asked. All right, guys, I'll see you later.